get back to you, Declan.
Great. It's morning here. I'm in Poland, in Central Europe. I'm from Ireland. I'm sure you know the country Ireland, near the UK. I am a director of Mobile, and I will be leading the orientation week, this week's lessons. So this week, I'm the presenter. Makoto is your coordinator. Today, we will do a very simple and easy, I hope, presentation on the topic of charity. Tomorrow, we will move on to a more business-like topic, social enterprise. And you can see the calendar on the Google Classroom. The entire February schedule is already posted in the Google Calendar. So I'll just tell you a little bit about me. I used to live in Japan until recently. I worked with Makoto. We both worked raising funds for school feeding in Malawi. Malawi is a country in Africa. You will be meeting several instructors from Malawi next week when the live lessons begin. So you will hear these words a lot. Poland, I'm in Poland, you're in Japan, the instructors are in Malawi, our HQ is in the UK, and I'm from Ireland. So there's a lot of people, a lot of moving parts, but hopefully you'll keep up with what's happening. So I used to live in Japan. I used to work for the fundraising NPO or NGO called Seibo. I also worked in Japan for Mobile, marketing and selling SIM cards, charitable SIM cards to foreign people who visited Japan. Of course, we live in a different world since last year, and there are no foreigners visiting Japan, so our jobs have changed a lot. We still have jobs, luckily. The Mobile Group has lots of different brands, some charities, and the majority of our profits go towards funding social enterprise and charitable projects in Malawi. So even today, this course that you are on is a social enterprise. What does that mean? We will tell you all about that this week. Makoto, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, short introduction of myself. I live in Japan, in Tokyo. I think you live in Shizuoka. And I'm working for the Mobile and also Seibo. I'm director of Seibo. So the same as Declan, fundraising for Malawi. And you learn many kind of things about Malawi, but also hope you can enjoy what is a social enterprise, what is the 現事業とか日本語で言いますけど、ソーシャルビジネスとか、そういう概念とかをケーススタディを通じていろんな視点で学んでもらえたら嬉しいなと思います。I hope you enjoy this course anyway.
One more thing before we ask Chihiro to introduce herself, Makoto. This is not my real background. Yeah, it's minus 8. There's snow outside the window. People are going around on sleds. If you go into the mountains about 30 minutes away, everybody's doing cross-country skiing. So this is not real. This is a picture of our social enterprise campus in Malawi. It's warm. It cheers me up, Makoto. It keeps me happy. Otherwise, I'm looking at snow all day.
So how is today's weather? Minus 4 or 5?
When I woke up, I checked the temperature gauge. It was minus 13 at around 7:30 in the morning, and now it's probably about minus 8.
Yeah, but it's different from your background.
It's sunny. It's sunny. Minus 8 and sunny. So, Chihiro, you have to say a few words of introduction. Just tell us who you are.
Okay. I'm Chihiro. I live in Shizuoka at the moment, in the last year of high school, and I am going to a university in Tokyo from next April. And I used to live in Scotland for about 3 years. until 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So
Where in Scotland did you live? Which
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh. Well, it might surprise you, but the nearest city to this social enterprise campus is called Blantyre. Have you heard of the city of Blantyre in Scotland? There is a very strong there's a very strong connection between Scotland and Malawi.
Really?
Some of the cities are still named after Scotland. So you have Blantyre, Livingston, for example. There is no Edinburgh, unfortunately, or Glasgow, but yeah, there's Blantyre and Livingston anyway. Do you miss it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Kind of. Not the weather, but yeah.
No.
Not the weather. Hey, you know, in Shizuoka, you probably have nice views of Mount Fuji, so you're not entirely in a bad place. Good green tea, nice views. Okay, Chihiro, a question for you before we kick off.
Yeah.
Have you already had a look at the Google Classroom?
Yes.
You did?
I have.
Okay. Well, first, I just want to show you, Chihiro, this is the calendar, and this is the schedule for teaching this month. It isn't compulsory. You don't have to attend every single class, but
Okay.
it's a good idea if you can do. The reason I say this is because, well, this week it's just we're getting you used to how this works. We're introducing what we do, who we are. It's simple. This week is nice and easy. So today we're on number 1 here, the welcome chat, and we'll be doing the first presentation on charity this morning. Well, your evening. Tomorrow we'll be doing social enterprise. On Wednesday, it's business English, teaching you how to express your opinion. On Thursday, we're doing a further explanation on charity. And then on Friday, one of our directors, probably Kie, who is Japanese but is a director living in London, she will be introducing the mobile group companies to give you an overview of who we are. And then, from week 2, we give the teaching schedule to our colleagues in Malawi who work in one of the buildings in my profile photo, and they work in an IT and leadership school. So they teach leadership, which is one of the lessons scheduled for Monday next week. They also teach community development, and then one of the other teachers teaches statistics. And why do you need to learn all of these? The answer is because when you come to the end of your internship, we hope that you will want to do a presentation, maybe on business, maybe on a social issue. We can talk about that. You will use, probably, some of the information you have learned in your final presentation. But I'm going to go back to the camera for a moment. I'm going to stop sharing, because I want to tell you that the main goal, and this is not to be forgotten, the main goal is for you to have fun. We don't want you to sort of think, oh, I don't want to take that class because it's not my thing. You come when you want to come, but if you're not able to come, let us know, because in particular, the instructors in Malawi, as you can probably imagine, to get a good internet connection requires a little bit of effort on their part. So they need to go to a separate room to ensure the IT department give them a good internet connection to deliver the lesson. So the first question we ask on the internship course is very simple. At least it sounds simple. What is charity? But in truth, most people have never actually really given any thought to this question. People do charity. They don't always go, what is charity? What's the first word that comes to mind when you hear the word charity?
Charity shops.
Charity shops, that's interesting, yeah. Charity shops are a very big thing in the UK and in Ireland. What about Japan? Do you see charity shops in Shizuoka?
Not really.
First of all, charity is an English word, so of course in Japan you probably have other words, but in Japan you do hear charity concert, but in Europe you hear charity shop. But what do you think charity is, Chihiro?
Charity is something that you do to help people who are in need.
I think you've already summed it up very well. So today we're looking at number 1, what is charity? We will also be delivering number 2, the goal of charity. And number 3, we ask a very interesting question, does charity do good? Number 4 and 5, we'll be asking you this month to self-study. In other words, when you've finished 1, 2 and 3, we ask you to read on your own 4 and 5. And then when you're finished, there is a quiz. It's simply a quiz that checks your knowledge, and it lets us know whether or not you've gotten the idea or whether you're way off mark. So for the moment, just remember that there is more to charity than today's presentation. So here's the dictionary definition. Generous actions or donations to aid the poor or helpless. So you said it's something you do to help people in need. So I think the poor, the ill or helpless would be considered people in need. So I think your explanation is probably more economical than the dictionary definition, but it's the exact same. So here's another simple definition to match your very nice simple definition. Charity is to give to others what belongs to you. So I have another question for you. Why? Why would you give others something that belongs to you? Why do people do charity?
People who do charity, they turn.
Why do you think they did in the past? Any idea? Let's look together. So where did charity begin? We don't know. We asked the question and we know the answer is nobody knows. So don't worry about where did charity begin. It's not a tough question because who knows? But we are going to just simply mention an early example of charity. So 4,500 years ago, the ancient Hebrews, who were the people who lived in what is today the nation of Israel, they paid a tithe. A tithe is an old word for a mandatory tax. And they paid a mandatory tax to benefit the poor in their own community. So somehow, as a society, they recognized there were people who needed help, and they made a system to help those people. So it seems charity was very organized even 4,500 years ago. It wasn't just a random act of kindness. But why? Why would people do that? So let's look at the historical reasons why people might have done charity. The first one, I think it's obvious, a community duty. You're part of a community, aren't you? Japan has sometimes natural disasters. You had the earthquake in Tohoku. Recently there was flooding in Kyushu and even an earthquake in Kumamoto. And you feel, as a Japanese person, some responsibility to act when a natural disaster occurs. And so that is almost like a community duty. You might, for example, want to go to Kyushu and help old people move from one house to the evacuation center. People help each other out of a sense of community. There's another reason here, which perhaps in today's world is less important than it was. Because in the past, people did charity to serve God by serving humans. Let me explain. God, in the Jewish and Christian concept, God is not here, he cannot be seen, but God exists, and he created humans. So humans wish to thank or show gratitude to the Creator, to God, so they served humans, because humans are God's creation. Some people believed that all of us are interdependent. We are all connected. I think that idea is strong in some of the Japanese religions, like Buddhism, for example, that we are all connected as a spiritual exercise. Now, what does that mean? Number 4 and number 5 are quite similar, and I'll explain. If they did something bad, then by doing charity, they can restore themselves to being good. But the last historical reason is as a way to salvation. Now, the word salvation is very popular in Europe because we have a charity, for example, called the Salvation Army. but salvation is a deep, deep religious word, and it means to save your soul. But what about charity today? Well, there is a study, a report on global generosity. It's called the World Giving Index, and it measures generosity on 3 parameters: time, money, and helping a stranger. So, in summary, it asks lots of people, how much time have you volunteered? In the last month, how much money have you donated? In the last month, how many strangers have you helped? And the results prove that generosity is not unique to one country or one culture. It's a universal phenomenon. So we'll have a look at some of the things the report shows. So here's a question for you, Chihiro. Who do you think gives more charity, the poor or the rich?
The rich.
Yeah, I mean, that seems obvious, doesn't it? The rich have money and the poor don't. Here's a surprise answer. Yeah, it's a surprise for everybody, but I want to show you how these presentations operate. I'm going to look under the slide, and here I want to show you that we are quoting a source. We're quoting an academic journal. It's actually a journal on psychology. And in this report, and you might not agree with it, it says that the poor give more often to the poor than the rich give to the poor. This is an academic journal, and the researchers state that for a poor person to do charity to another poor person improves their social status. They can increase their status in society. But for a rich person, they're already rich. By giving away their money, their status doesn't change. In fact, because they have so much money, that is their status. They're unlikely to let it go. So it's a very unusual argument, but these are the questions we would like you to think about. I'm not saying read an academic journal. Just sometimes we are surprised by our own world. So who gives more charity? I would have said the rich. I would never have thought of the poor. So it's a surprise, but the reasons are also very interesting. And if you have time and you want to read more about why this is the answer, please look at the details at the bottom of the slide. So here's another question for you. This is based on the World Giving Index. The World Giving Index said 7 out of 10 countries on this continent are most likely to help a stranger. So in other words, let's say we have to pick the kindest continent. If you're a stranger and you go to this continent, you will receive a warm welcome. Is it Europe, Asia, North America, or Africa? Chihiro, this is for you. I'm so happy you said that. I am from Europe. I live in Europe. We are friendly people, but we are not as friendly as Africans. We are not as friendly. And Africa has a lot of reputations because of the media. Most of them are negative stereotypes such as war or famine. But the real Africa is kind. Very, very kind. And 7 of the 10 countries that are the kindest in the world are in Africa. And one of them, I'm so happy as well to say, is Malawi. I'm not Malawian, but I'm proud to have connections with Malawi, and I'm so happy that people realize they're kind. The other countries in the top 10 are America, Canada, and New Zealand. But Africa dominates when it comes to kindness. Are you surprised? Yeah. Africa doesn't get the publicity it deserves. It gets the publicity it doesn't want, usually. Now, you lived in Scotland. So did you see any examples of charity in the 3 years you lived in Edinburgh?
Yeah, we at our school we did sleep in the yard, I think.
In the schoolyard.
Yeah.
Did you sleep overnight?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
In the summer, I hope?
No, it was in December.
In December, wow. Was it cold?
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Like a group,
You were in a... yeah.
like an activity,
Mm-hmm.
and the teacher always talked about, I forgot what it was called, but it was about equality. It was called Equality Committee, and the teacher who led the group was part of the sleep in the yard, so I was asked to join.
Okay. And did you raise money for charity or, for example, for homeless people who live outside?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's interesting because you mentioned the school had an equality committee. Have you heard of any similar initiatives in Japanese high school?
We have a committee called Kohitsuji
Lam?
Yukai.
You mentioned equality because charity is conducted under different words, and part of this course is to teach you the language of charity. So on this slide you're looking at a question which says, what is philanthropy? Have you heard of this word?
No.
It sounds difficult and it's definitely a long word, and it comes from the Greek language. The ancient Greeks created the word philanthropy, meaning love of mankind. And because of this concept, hospitals and orphanages were always and are still tax exempt. They don't pay tax. Now, if you lived in America, you would hear the word philanthropy spoken about instead of charity, to replace charity. And it isn't exactly the same. So what I'd like to do is show you this very, very short video. And it is of American people being asked, what is philanthropy? They ask all these people, what does philanthropy mean? Some people more or less understand. They say it's helping other people. Some people say it's donating money. One guy says it's acting, which means he doesn't understand at all. So the answer is yes and no. Sometimes in the world of charity, the word philanthropy is used and it has a slightly different meaning. So this is the definition from the video. Philanthropy is the use of private wealth to secure the public good through research and planning. Okay, it's a bit of a long definition. Private wealth is your money. The public good is everybody's happiness. Research and planning is something interesting. And let me ask you a question now. Which of these two ideas is not in charity and is unique to philanthropy? The use of private wealth or research and planning?
Research and planning.
Because in charity, for example, the sleepover you had in the schoolyard, if you collected money from your friends, your circle of friends, your parents, this is private money. You can give your money to whoever you want to. It's your money. You're free to use it how you like. And in charity, that's what people do. But when it comes to philanthropy, research and planning are also required. Let's imagine we have poor people sleeping on the streets of Edinburgh, and we want to use our money to help them, to buy them a hot meal, a cup of coffee, and we use our money. That's a donation, that's charity. But let's say we want to remove the problem of homelessness from Edinburgh. Then we need to create support structures, maybe shelters at night time that are open, and we need to plan. We need to research what the problem is. Why do people become homeless? How can we prevent homelessness? And that is philanthropy. You're solving the structural reasons why the problem exists. Whereas charity is a little bit different. It's more of an emotional response. Charity comes from the heart. It's spontaneous. You want to make a change, you want to make a difference, you want to do it now. It's immediate, it's emotional. It focuses on rescue, saving the person now, relief, maybe giving that person a cup of tea to warm them up. It's now. And it's short-term help. In the case of philanthropy, philanthropy is more strategic. It focuses on rebuilding, it focuses on problem solving, and it also focuses on providing long-term relief. So can you see the slightly different nuance, the slightly different approach of charity versus philanthropy? Is that making a little bit more sense?
Yes.
Okay. This slide is the shortest possible summary of charity. Charity is something we do to help others. Yep, I think we can agree on that. The goal is to reduce the suffering of those in need. So here's a new definition which we will continue to use throughout the topic of charity for the next 5 presentations. The goal of charity is to reduce the suffering and increase the well-being of others. And if you agree with this definition, we will be asking all kinds of difficult questions. For example, when we get to presentation number 3 and we ask, does charity do good? And we use this definition, you will realize that in some cases charity is bad. So it's really important that we agree on the definition and we continue to ask hard questions, and we will do. So today is just an overview, an introduction, and hard questions are coming soon. Now earlier we looked at the historic reasons for charity. Why do you think people do charity today, in today's world? In your story that you just shared with us, you told us that you did a sleepover. Why?
Yeah.
Why did you do a sleepover?
Because I always saw people on the street, town,
Okay.
and when the teacher explained about why we do the sleepover, I wanted to be a part of it and help.
And why do you think the other people in your class who slept over, why do you think they joined?
Probably the same reason.
Do you think any of them took part because they wanted to have fun with their friends, for example? To be with their friends for the night?
Maybe.
Which do you think of all of these motivates people to do charity today? Is it social networking? For example, you just want to be with your friends. Community duty? Giving back? A family tradition? Is it good business to do charity? Personal fulfillment, I feel great if I do charity, or because it's the right thing to do? Do you think that in today's world the sense of community is stronger now than it was before, when, for example, we were all born in a village, brought up in a village, lived in a village, whereas today, we move. For example, you moved to Scotland, you lived there for 3 years, now you're back in Shizuoka. Potentially, in the future, you will go to Tokyo, to university, and who knows what's going to happen after that. So, community duty, is that stronger now or weaker, do you think? We all want to belong. You live in a country called Japan. Sometimes Japan is called a family nation. You're all Japanese, so you feel connected. That's not as easy in a society that is cosmopolitan. Think of London, for example. I'm sure you've been to London. There are people of every nationality speaking lots of different languages, and so the sense of community might not be the same as in Japan, or it might be different. It might be there are pockets of community. But anyway, the answer to the question, which of these motivate people to give today is all of them, of course. They all exist. And we look at number 1 here, social networking. In the image, you can see people dressed as Santa. This is a popular charity event. It's the annual Christmas Santa run. And it's for charity. But a lot of people take part in these kind of events. They don't always know which charity will benefit. But they want to take part. They want to dress up. They want to have fun. And that's okay. That's absolutely okay as a motivation. If you interviewed each and every participant and you said, guys, where is the money going to? What difference will it make? They might not have the exact answer. Some of them might not know at all. I just joined because my friend joined. I wanted to dress up as Santa to take pictures for my Instagram page. It's an extreme example, but it is a motivation today. It's the right thing to do. We live in a connected world. We know what is happening on the other side of the planet. And if something wrong is happening, if people are in distress, people are in need, we are moved by that plight and we do charity because it's the right thing to do. Number 3, belonging to a community. We spoke about this. The sense of belonging still exists in people. People want to be part of a community. If you go back in history in Japan, it wasn't all that long ago when every house there were 3 generations of people living in the same house. Today, the grandparents don't usually live with the parents and the children together, so the community has changed. It's changed the model. So we all want to belong, and the idea of you moving to Scotland and seeing people living on the streets, you also wanted to improve your community and you did a sleepover, so it is a real motivation. This is a controversial one. Doing charity is good for business. What can I possibly mean by saying that? Doing charity can be good for business. Any idea? Let's say I own Starbucks and I tell you, if you drink this coffee here, you can change the lives of children in South America, okay? And you say, wow, Starbucks are such a good company. And you share my story on your Facebook page or Twitter. And you say, Starbucks are really cool. Their coffee helps children in South America. Drink Starbucks. You are helping my business by telling my story. And I am doing some charity. I am giving some of the money from the coffee to children in South America. Can you see how doing charity can be good for business? There's also another example. You can see the word on this slide. It says taxes. In some cases, if you make a donation, particularly a big donation, you can get tax exemption. You do not pay income tax or other tax on the donations. If you are a business, you can choose to make a donation and you don't have to pay tax on that. So it's a clever way of using your profits, or it can be a clever way of using your profits, because you don't have to pay tax on it. I think we spoke about something similar in Japan. Was that Furusato Noze?
Yes. Very similar topic, I think.
Is it similar? So you could look at it as good publicity or good business. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Can you see why this might be controversial? Let me explain a bit further. Some countries like Ireland and Switzerland, for example, have stopped offering tax exemption on donations, and there's a good reason. Companies should donate not to avoid tax, number 1. Number 2, governments need tax money to run the country. So if every company decides to choose their own charity to donate to, then the amount of tax received by the government is less. So who or how can we fix roads? Can we fund hospitals? Eventually we need to get tax money from somewhere. So the idea of offering tax exemption on donations is problematic. But it is good for business to be seen to be kind. Now, some businesses are kind, some businesses want to be seen as kind, and using tax exemption is a clever way of doing that. Okay? So here's a question for you, Chihiro. Is it necessary or good to get a tax break for a donation? Let's say you move to Tokyo next year. I think you're talking about going to university next April. You might get a part-time job, and somebody says, there are homeless people in Tokyo. Let's do something about it. And if you donate to charity, you don't have to pay income tax. Is that a good motivation for you?
Sounds good. I don't know.
Well, I don't know either. I have to say, I'm with you. If I was asked this question, I would say yeah, because as a private individual, if I thought I could make a donation and get, let's say, a tax discount or a tax break, as a private individual, I think it helps my motivation to give. Yeah. So it might be a really good thing. But on a large scale, when we talk about corporates and companies, if they use this system to avoid paying tax, that's when it gets questionable. But from a private, personal perspective, I think it's great. And it does exist in Japan. If you want to donate to Ninte NPO, you can get a tax break. It may not be your main motivation, but it might help you to make a donation if you knew you could save tax.
Yeah.
Let's go back to today's motivations for doing charity. Personal fulfillment. It might sound strange. It might sound like it's a paradox. But when you give something away, you gain fulfillment. So giving is receiving. People who give a lot can be some of the happiest people on our planet. So personal fulfillment is a huge motivation. How did you feel after you did the sleepover? Apart from tired and hungry?
Yeah. It was fun.
So what has family tradition got to do with anything? Well, if you see charity being done around you, you are more likely to do charity yourself. So for example, if your grandparents looked after somebody in the community and you saw them doing it when you were a kid, or your parents got involved in, picking up litter in the community or donating money to a charity, then it is very likely that you will also grow up to be charitable. We have an expression in English, charity begins at home. And this phrase is misused quite a lot. It's come to take on the meaning that charity should only happen in your country and we shouldn't help other people. We need to help our people first. But the original meaning was that we should teach our children. We should show them charity by doing charity at home and by explaining acts of kindness. And in other words, bring the next generation up in an environment of charity. So family tradition is important because even though it doesn't seem obvious, charity can be learned. Number 7, giving back. Everything we have, we were given. Therefore, we should give to those who have less than ourselves. This is a quote from an American poet. Guess which of the motivations that we've covered explain best what the poet felt. This is after doing charity. I have found among its other benefits, giving liberates the soul of the giver. Okay, so there's clearly benefits in giving, but the main one in this case is that giving liberates the soul of the giver. How do you think that person felt after doing charity?
This person felt good.
Which of these do you think was the main motivation being talked about? The person felt something. They felt good. Have confidence in your answer because you're absolutely right. It's personal fulfillment for sure. What motivates you to give your time, talent or treasure? And these are the 3 T's. Time, talent or treasure. Let me explain your time. That's like volunteering. talent, it's your skill you can give to help somebody else, or your treasure. Your treasure, of course, can be money, it usually is. So what motivates you to give your time, talent or treasure? If it's fun, you're more likely to do it. Well, that to me sounds a little bit like social networking, because when you're having fun, you're usually not on your own. If something's fun, hey, you're more likely to continue it. So that's a good answer. There is no correct answer, by the way. I don't have an answer for you. This is a personal question. Here's a quotation from Einstein, from Albert Einstein. And it's difficult to understand, but let's think about it. It is every man's obligation to put back into the world at least the equivalent of what he takes out of it. A challenge to not only take from the world, but also to give. And we have the expression give and take. And Einstein is suggesting that what we take from the world we give. And I find that an amazingly tough concept to understand, because when I was born, like all of us, I was a baby. I relied on human kindness of my parents for love, for food, for everything. Now I'm 47, I have a family of my own, I have to look after a child, so maybe that's a little bit give and take, but I feel that I have been taking all my life. To give that back would take another lifetime. Now maybe I'm just overly analysing Einstein's quotation, but Chihiro, how do you feel? Do you think this is possible?
I think it's very hard.
That's how I interpret it. Now maybe it's more to do with emotions, for example, that we've been loved all our lives. We grew up in a community, we grew up in a family, we grew up with friends, and there are people who could do with that same kind of love, and we can share it. Can you learn charity? Apart from learning about charity, can you learn to do it?
You kind of learn from seeing other people do it.
I'm going to introduce a lady who believes certainly you can learn charity. Her name is Doris Buffett, and this is an image of her here. She is the sister of a very famous man called Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is famous as an investor. Now, Doris Buffett passed away recently. She's no longer with us, and I'm really hoping that I can share this video because it's about her foundation. It's called the Giving Foundation. And very quickly, I'm going to tell you the concept of the Giving Foundation. She's wealthy, her family are very wealthy, but she's chosen to encourage young American people to give away her money. So she's connecting with universities and high schools, and they form classes, and each class is gifted from the foundation something like $10,000 on the condition that they must give it away and they must follow how the donation makes an impact in their communities. And so the hope is that by encouraging people to give, they experience the feeling of giving and the rewards, the benefits that come with giving, using Doris Buffett's money, of course. So it's a very novel approach. She's teaching people to give by giving her money to them to give away. It sounds a little bit unusual. Why? Why would anybody want to learn charity? Why would they want to learn to do charity? What are the benefits, do you think? That's a good answer. I know what you're suggesting. You would suggest learning charity to know how to do it effectively. That's a very, very important question, and we do actually tackle this question later on. But this question is more for people who have never done charity, or maybe grew up in a place where they didn't see charity being done. So for them, why would you encourage anybody to get involved, to learn charity? Do you think? That's a good answer as well. Here's an explanation. Helping others is not only good for them and a good thing to do, it also makes us happier and healthier too. Giving connects us to others, creates stronger communities, and helps to build a happier society for everyone. And it's not all about money. We can also give our time, ideas, and energy. So if you want to feel good, do good. But can we say that giving is really good for you? And we look at the last slide here, and it's a picture of balloons. It doesn't say anything. So you have to look underneath the slide, and it says here, research published in the journal Science found that donating to a charity activates your brain. It activates neural activities in the areas of the brain that are linked to reward processing. It's a strange slide to end on, but we encourage people to learn charity because guess what? It actually makes us happier and healthier, as is proven in the academic journal Science. I'm going to stop the presentation at this point and switch back to camera and ask you to tell us what you thought about that. This is just an icebreaker, an introduction to the topic. The whole internship program is not about charity. The reason we ask you to do the charity presentations and tomorrow's presentations on social enterprise is simply because we are an organization that is made up of charities and social enterprise. So to understand our motivation, our business process, we need you to understand what is charity. We also need you to understand what is social enterprise. Eventually, that'll all become, very obvious why Mobile does what it does. I said I would show you what's going on here in Poland. I'm living in the middle of nowhere. But I'm going to show you outside my window. There's a lot of high-rise buildings. No Mount Fuji, no metropolitan tower buildings of Shinjuku, no Akabane izakayas. It's different, but it's nice.
Is there some bars?
No, the culture of drinking here is different than in Japan. There are no pubs in the same way that they are in Scotland or in Ireland. People drink at home and they make their own alcohol. So sometimes I get a bottle of homemade wine made from grapes grown in Poland or stronger alcohol. Very interesting. Everybody tells you, this is really healthy, but afterwards you realize maybe it's not 100% healthy.
Yeah. Because it is hot. It is cold, so you need something to feel hot.
Well, that's true, but even in the summer they tend to drink the same thing, so I don't think it's entirely cold medicine in the way that you describe. But slowly you discover places. I mean, I found a small bakery. It's the smallest bakery shop. Like in Japan, they have these tiny shops, but the people who run the shop are the biggest people in the world. They're really tall because they're volleyball players. So they have a tiny shop, they're really tall, and they make donuts. And in Poland, they have a traditional donut called a pączek or pączki in plural. And these pączki they're like a big fat donut with no hole. And they're tasty, but there's no hole in the donut, okay? Because that's their donut. And they're really sweet and really good, but I wanted a donut with a hole. And they're called oponki. Oponki, which means tires. It's like wheels of a car. So it took not rapungi, no. It sounds like rapungi. Maybe 6 oponkis are rapungi.